In the National Library of Sweden, in Stockholm, sits a single-bound book that is 92 centimeters tall, 50 centimeters wide, 22 centimeters thick, and weighs 75 kilograms. It is the largest surviving medieval manuscript in the world. It contains the complete Latin Bible, 4 major secular works, a calendar, exorcism formulas, and a 4-page illustration of the devil. According to legend, it was written in one night. According to paleographers, it is the work of one scribe, working continuously, over roughly 25 years. The Codex Gigas, Latin for giant book, was made in the early 13th century, almost certainly at the Benedictine monastery of Podlažice, in what is now the Czech Republic. The exact dates of its creation are not recorded in the manuscript itself, but a calendar inside it, and references to historical events that stop in 1229 place its production in the period between roughly 1204 and 1230. Physically, the book is unprecedented. Its 310 surviving leaves of vellum required, by modern estimates, the skins of about 160 donkeys or calves. The leaves are bound in a heavy wooden board cover, faced with leather and decorated with metal corner bosses. A grown adult cannot lift the book without help. It is normally kept in a flat horizontal display case, open to a single spread, with controlled lighting and humidity. Roughly 12 leaves are missing. Their content is recorded in the contemporary index. The pages were removed deliberately at some point in the medieval period, but no surviving record explains why or by whom. The contents are unusually broad for a single-bound volume. The Codex contains the entire text of the Latin Vulgate Bible in the older pre-Vulgate version for the books of Acts and Revelation, which is itself a useful piece of evidence for textual historians of the New Testament. It contains the Antiquities and the Jewish War of the 1st century historian Flavius Josephus. It contains Isidore of Seville's 7th century encyclopedia, the Etymologiae. It contains the Chronica Boemorum, the Chronicle of Bohemia by Cosmas of Prague, written shortly before 1225. It contains medical works derived from Constantine the African and Hippocrates. It contains a calendar with a list of saints. It contains a list of magical formulas, including exorcism rites for use against possession. All of this is in a single, consistent, formal Carolingian-derived script across the entire volume. Modern paleographic analysis, most thoroughly the work led by the Czech medievalists Mikl Dragan and Lucy Dolgelova, and the National Library of Sweden's own scholarly catalogue issued at the time of the 2007 exhibition, concludes that the entire book is the work of one hand, one person, using one ductus, over a sustained period. On the surviving page, conventionally numbered 290 in modern catalogues, the manuscript contains a full-page illustration. It is approximately 50 centimeters tall. It depicts a single-horned devil, in green, red, and black ink, with claws and a forked tongue, framed by a red architectural arch. The opposite page contains an illustration of the heavenly city. The two are deliberately paired. No other Bible manuscript of comparable size, surviving from the same period, contains a devil illustration of this scale. The standard medieval iconographic vocabulary did include the devil, in marginal grotesques, in initials, in Last Judgment scenes, but a single full-page devil portrait sitting opposite the heavenly city is not a common compositional choice. It is one of the features that gave the book its later popular nickname, the Devil's Bible. A regional Bohemian legend recorded in monastic chronicles from at least the 16th century onwards explains the existence of the manuscript with a story. A monk at Podlažice was condemned by his abbot for an undisclosed monastic offense to be walled up alive, a medieval punishment occasionally documented in canon law records. The monk pleaded for his life. He offered, in exchange for clemency, to write in a single night a book that would contain all the knowledge of the abbey, and would bring glory to the monastery. The abbot agreed. The monk worked for hours. By midnight he understood he could not finish. He prayed to the devil for assistance. The devil completed the manuscript. In gratitude, and to acknowledge the help, the monk added the full-page devil portrait near the center of the book. The legend is a folk explanation. It is not in the manuscript itself. The earliest written versions of it post-date the manuscript by at least 300 years. Modern medievalists treat it as a later attempt to account for two real and unusual features: the consistency of the handwriting throughout an enormous text, and the presence of the devil image. Modern handwriting analysis of the Codex began in earnest in the 1990s and intensified after the National Library of Sweden completed full digitization in 2007, which made every page available to international scholars at high resolution. The findings are consistent. The script is the work of one scribe. The pen strokes do not show the kind of variation across the volume that two scribes working at different desks would produce. The ink is largely uniform, made from oak wool and copper as to a recipe standard in Central European scriptoria of the period. The vellum preparation is consistent. The estimated production time, assuming a single scribe working at the pace recorded for comparable Romanesque period manuscripts, is between 20 and 30 years. The estimate accounts for the time required for ruling each page, mixing ink, repairing or replacing pens, decorating initials, and binding rests. It does not allow for ordinary monastic obligations. The scribe would also have been a monk, with prayers, meals, and offices throughout each day. With those factored in, the realistic estimate sits at the upper end of the range. No surviving document names the scribe with certainty. The traditional later attribution to a Herman the Recluse appears in chronicles only from the 16th century onwards and is not corroborated. The honest scholarly position is one anonymous Bohemian Benedictine working over decades. The Codex's path out of Bohemia is well documented in surviving inventory records. The Podlažice monastery was always small, and by the late 13th century it was struggling financially. The book was sold or pledged in 1295 to the Cistercian monastery at Sedlec, then transferred again to the Benedictine monastery at Brevnov, near Prague. In 1594, the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf Roman II, an enthusiastic collector of curiosities, manuscripts, and what he understood as occult knowledge, acquired the Codex Gigas for his Prague palace collection. In 1648, in the closing weeks of the 30 Years' War, the Swedish army sacked Prague. The Codex was among the manuscripts removed and taken to Stockholm. It was deposited in the Royal Library, the predecessor of the modern National Library of Sweden, the Kungliga Biblioteket, and it has been there ever since. It survived a serious library fire in 1797, when it was thrown out of a window to save it from the flames. The bound corner of the cover still shows damage from the fall. The Codex Gigas is on permanent display at the Kungliga Biblioteket in Stockholm. It is opened to one spread at a time, on a rotation. The complete digitized text and high-resolution images of every page are publicly available through the library's online manuscript collection. The full-page devil portrait, on page 290, is one of the most viewed pages in the digital catalogue. The largest medieval manuscript in the world was made by one Bohemian monk, in one monastery that no longer exists, over roughly 2.5 decades, in the early 13th century. It contains the entire Latin Bible, 4 major works of late antiquity and early medieval scholarship, a calendar, medical recipes, exorcism formulas, and a full-page portrait of the devil. The legend says it was written in one night. The handwriting says it was written in 25 years. The book itself sits in Stockholm. Both versions can be true at once. One is folk explanation, the other is what the page evidence shows. The manuscript outlasted its monastery, outlasted its emperor, outlasted the war that took it out of Bohemia, and outlasted the fire that nearly destroyed it.